Hi fourth graders, and welcome to lesson 11-2. We are making line plots today. We're on page 421 in your Envision textbook volume 2. And we're going to be making line plots to represent data. So remember, data are just pieces of information, numbers. This is called a data table. This data table has shoe lengths sold, and they're in inches. And these happen to be 7 1/4, 7 3/4, 8, 8 1/4, 8 1/2, and so forth, all the way to 12 3/4. And they are in order of least to greatest. The number below the shoe length is the number sold at that length. So in other words, 7 1/4 inch shoes, there were 2 sold in one day. 7 3/4 inch, 1 was sold in one day, and so forth. So let's look at Solve and Share. The manager of a shoe store kept track of the lengths of shoes sold in a day. Complete the line plot using the data from the shoe store. What length shoe was sold the most? A line plot can help you organize your data. Show your work in the space below. So you will see a line plot, an empty line plot here. It's just a number line with these numbers represented. So they actually started at 7 and went to 13. So they just went 1/4 of an inch less and greater than our smallest and our largest shoe. I just strongly suggest that you use a ruler or a straight edge of some sort, either a book or something when you're creating your line plots, your number lines. So you will look at these and notice that our fractions are fourths. What that means is from 7 to the next whole number 8, there should be 1, 2, 3, and then up to 4. So 1 jump, 2, 3, 4 up to the next whole number. Try to keep your distances between each one about the same so that we don't have big gaps. We don't want to do something like this, and then this one's right here, and then the next one there, just because it doesn't accurately show each is the same amount of difference. So 1/4, another 4th, another 4th, another 4th. So it would be more like this, where they're close to the same. Doesn't have to be exact, but at least as close as you can be to being the same distance apart. So if this were my 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, this would be the 8. And I would probably move this one over a little bit to make it a little more evenly spaced. So this would be 7 1/4, 7 1/2, 7 3/4, and then 8. Okay, so you're just drawing a number line. You're going to start with your smallest, or just before the smallest data piece represented, and theirs looks a little bit like this. Now this line plot is not completed because all it is the number line with the numbers on it at this point. What we are to do now, we need to take the number sold and plot it on our line plot. So we're going to organize the data here on the line plot. We notice that under 7 1/4, 2 shoes were sold. So we look for 7 1/4. I've circled 7 here. There's 7 1/2. We know that 7 1/4 comes between 7 1/2 because 7 1/2 is the same thing as 7 2/4. So 7, 7 1/4, 7 2/4, 7 3/4, 7 4/4, or 8. So this right here would be 7 1/4, and I could draw X's or dots, and I mark that there are 2 shoes at 7 1/4. The next size is 7 3/4. Remember we said 7 1/4, 7 2/4, 7 3/4, so that would be right here. This is 7 3/4. Now were 3 sold at 8, so 1, 2, 3. It goes right above the number. 8 1/4 would be the next jump over from 8, and there was 1 sold. So maybe we'll mark those as we plot those so we know what we've done, what comes next. 8 1/2. There were 3 shoes sold at 8 1/2. So we show that there. Now we jump all the way to 9 3/4. Here's 9, so this would be 9 1/4, 2/4, 9 3/4. And we had 3 shoes sold there at that length. Then we jump to 10, which is right next door, and there were 2 shoes sold at 10. We jump over to 10, 10 1/4, 10 1/2, and there were 6 shoes sold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shoes sold at the 10 1/2 size. Then we jump up to 12 1/2, which is right here, and we have 2 shoes sold at 12 1/2. And finally 12 3/4. So remember 12, 12 1/4, 12 2/4 or a half, 12 3/4. So 1 shoe here. Now looking at our line plot, we notice that the length of shoes sold the most would have the most X's in this case on our line plot, or dots if you chose to use dots. So it's obvious that the shoe length that was sold the most was 10 1/2, and we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There were 6 shoes sold in one day at the 10 1/2 size. So looking back, generalize, how can you use a line plot to find the data that occur most often? That's right, we would look for the most plots. You know, this one has 6, it goes all the way up here. We notice some don't have any, that would be the least sold. Or the ones we've got some just sold 1, but we notice that the most would be 10 1/2. So what occurs most often is going to have the most points represented, or data pieces represented on the line plot. All right. Then you will, after this video, you'll do page 422, follow along with your visual learning video. And we are going to not be able to do this one without looking at the visual learning, which we're not going to do right now. We will look at the table shown at the right here to compare lengths of Sandy's pencils with the lengths of Serena's pencils. So we will have to take a peek at 422 to see the lengths of Serena's pencils because they're shown on the previous page. Who has more pencils that are the same length, Serena or Sandy? So we're gonna have to put those side by side. All right, we have red 5 inches, red 6 1/4, blue 4 3/4, blue 5 1/4, green 4 3/4, green 6 3/4, purple 4 1/8, purple 5 3/4, orange 4 1/2, orange 6 3/4, and yellow 4 3/4, yellow 6 2/4. Our question was, who has more pencils that are the same length, Serena or Sandy? So we have, let's see, are there any 6 1/4? No. 5 1/4? No. 6 3/4? Looks like we have a green and we have orange. 5 3/4, there are no others, or 6 2/4. So this is Sandy's pencils, and she has 2 of the same length. Going back to Serena, she had a blue at 4 3/4, a green at 4 3/4. She had a yellow at 4 3/4. So it looks like Serena had the most pencils that are the same length. And that was 4 3/4 inch. Which set of data was easier to compare and why? Why would it be easier? This set of data or this set? And I would say that this one has all 4s except for 1. This one has, we've got 4s, 5s, and 6s. Actually, no 4s in this one. Our pencils are just between 5 and 6 inches plus lengths. So if that makes it easier for you to compare the data, what I think they're getting at is this one had a line plot already constructed, so we could see 1, 2, 3 at the same length. This one does not, so we had to go through and look and count. Whereas we did the same with this one because we ignored the line plot, but if you're looking at the line plot, it's very easy to see your data in an organized way. So let's go ahead and do that for Sandy's pencils. 6 1/4, we don't have a scale yet. So to make our scale, we need to think about what is our smallest and what is our greatest length. So looks like 5 1/4. So let's see if we can start at 5 and count by fourths. 5 1/4, 5 1/2, 5 3/4. So that would make that 6. 6 1/4, 6 2/4, 6 3/4. I think that was our greatest. So we should be good to go. This was our 5 1/4. We have 6 1/4 here, the jump after 6, and 6 2/4 would be right here. So we've got 1 at 6 1/4, 1 at 5 1/4, 1 at 6 3/4, 5 3/4, which we didn't plot yet, which would be right here. 6 3/4, another one here, and 6 2/4, one right here. Now it's easier to compare. It's the same because we can just glance at this one, see 1, 2, 3. We see our greatest here are 2 that are the same. You will be completing the independent practice 4 and 5 using this data table. You will draw again, try to use a straight edge, or if you have a ruler, then go ahead and make your line, number line, before you make you're able to make the plots on your number line. And then you're going to complete number 10 on the back on page 424. The number line has been started for you. It doesn't have the scale yet, so you're going to have to look at your data, see what the smallest might be. Glancing at it, I'm picking out 5 here. Then find your greatest length or number, and that would be probably 6 3/4, and make sure that you start with a 5 and can have room to stop it or go beyond 6 3/4. Then after you complete that, you will look to see if there's a quick check to do to finish your work for today.